Suppose you were getting ready for college, but you didn't know how to properly keep all your materials organized. Well, today, we'll be discussing great methods in organizing your classes in your backpack. We'll discuss the materials you need, properly labeling the materials, how to organize binders, putting in folders and booklets, and where to put smaller important tools in your backpack in today's How Do I? Hello, and welcome to today's edition of How Do I, where we teach students helpful and proper steps in performing any specific job or activity. For today's show, we'll be discussing how to properly organize your backpack for college. By the end of this show, we will have you turn your backpack from this mess to this. There will be 6 steps that will be needed to have an organized backpack. Step 1, we'll discuss the materials you will need to have in your backpack. Step 2, we'll show how to properly label your materials. Step 3 will be about how to correctly put 3-ring binders in the backpack. In Step 4, we will tell you where and how to organize additional items such as notebooks, textbooks, and filing folders. Step 5 will focus on additional space for tools like calculators, flashcards, and for TV production students, where to put your DVC tapes, and then we will review the steps in Step 6. We will begin our discussion with Step 1, which is discussing the required materials you need to make your backpack organized.
In preparing for this procedure, you need a variety of materials, such as a backpack, which is the most common. The best backpack to get is an LL Bean backpack because they tend to carry the most details in a backpack that you would want to have, such as a variety of pockets to put materials in, and the size usually is standard. The second thing you would need is labels. You could either call them adhesive labels or stickers, but these are commonly used to label all your materials such as your binders, your notebooks, textbooks, anything you can think of that you need to put them in so you know which course it's for. And of course you would need some 3-ring binders to know the proper procedure in installing them in your backpack. You should have some folders, textbooks, and notebook pads that you would use in taking notes. And you would also need smaller materials such as calculator, spare pens or pencils, or for TV students, extra DVC tapes.
These materials are common for a backpack to have for college or even for high school. Next, we will talk about labeling your materials properly.
Labeling is a quite simple procedure. All you have to do is basically take a sticker that you use for labeling, take it off its slide, and put it on any specific material that you have. Commonly, you would put it on your binder, your folder, or your notebook. So that way you'll know which class it's for. As I said before, there's 2 reasons why this is helpful. A, you would be able to find the specific subject you're looking for in your backpack without having to dig all the way through your backpack to find it. And B, it keeps you on track. So in a way, it's a great organization tool.
From that step, you can really see why labeling is so important for proper organization. Now we'll see how you should put in your 3-ring binders in your backpack properly.
Now, inserting binders is also a basic easy step, but you got to know how to properly do it. Take for example this. You put in the binders one by one, just in a normal pace, but notice how when I get to the 4th or 5th one into the backpack, it gets a little tighter and tough for me to put in. That's because they're put in, just back to back instead of the proper way. Because if you do it this way, there's going to be so much open space on one side of your backpack, and the other side is going to be covered with the rims of your binders, and it's going to make the backpack's room a little unbalanced. And this not only can hurt the backpack, but it can also affect your own back because you'll be carrying more weight on either your left or right side than you would for both sides of your back. The right way to do it is to sort of crisscross the binders. What do I mean by that? Well, basically it's as simple as this. You take like your first binder and you put it inside your backpack, like so. But then you take the second one, and instead of putting it in the same direction, you turn it to the opposite direction and place it inside the backpack. And then you do the same continuing pattern by putting it back forward and then turn it around for the fourth binder. And basically it makes it more square inside the backpack instead of making it sort of triangular and having the heavier end on the left or right side of the backpack. It's sort of coming in a more equal balance.
In some college courses, the professor might say that it isn't required to carry 3-ring binders for their class. To make it easier on yourself, you should only concern yourself with having a folder and your textbooks. So where do we put our folders and textbooks? Here's how.
When it comes to inserting your folders, your notebooks, and textbooks, it's a basic, simple procedure. There's basically 2 things you just need to know. A, you got to put it from biggest to smallest, and B, you got to make sure you have them in their correct courses. And what I basically mean by that for step A is basically you have to make sure you have whichever piece of that course, such as the textbook or the folder, whichever one's the tallest or the biggest, you always have it at the back of the pile first on your backpack. Because if you do it the opposite way, where you have the smaller object behind the rest of the materials for that course, it's going to be a little bit painful for you to be carrying your backpack that way, because then you have a smaller object, such as a smaller textbook, poking out from the back of the backpack, and it's not going to feel very comfortable for your lower back, and it just would not match up. The best way to do it is to make sure you have whichever one's the tallest. Like, for example, this first subject, the orange folder, is the tallest, so you put that one in first, and then you put in the second tallest or biggest, the notepad, and then you put in the textbook. And sometimes it might change. Sometimes it might be the textbook's the largest, so you put that in first, and then you put in the folder, and then the notebook. And remembering step B is you got to keep it in order of courses. Basically, that means if you have a textbook, a folder, and a notebook, and they're all for, say, American film or your math course, you try to keep them all together in the same pile instead of just randomly putting them in your backpack. Now, there's a reason why this system works, and that basically is that when you're trying to grab for a certain subject in your backpack, it'll be easy for you to find. You just have to simply look at the labels as said in step 2 and pick them out, so that way you can study for an exam or just do your homework.
Our final part in this procedure is where to put additional items in the backpack. An example of additional items could be tools you need in a course, such as a calculator or a ruler.
Small materials you might carry in your backpack, such as a calculator, spared pens or pencils, or let's say for TV students, you need extra DVC tapes to carry in your backpack. The best place to put them is inside the smaller pockets of your backpack. You could also call it a pouch. And that basically would be found right in the very front of the backpack, in front of the larger pockets. Commonly, in most backpacks, it would be this big one right here. Now, usually when you put them in here, you can just put them in neatly, but as this LL Bean backpack showed, it's more detailed. You have a space for pencils, a special Velcro patch in the back where you can put in flashcards or your calculator. And for the DVC tapes, you can just put them in the very front, and it's well organized right then and there. Any smaller materials you can put in, such as floppy disks or flash drives, can be put in the these particular pockets. The reason of putting them in these pockets is so that way they don't move around while you're walking around the campus, and they don't just move around and possibly break. It makes more sense to put them in the smaller pockets for that particular reason. And if you wanted even tighter room for small objects such as a flash drive, you could put them in these pockets in the front of the patch. Some backpacks might not have these, so you probably want to just put them in the smaller pocket patch. But if you have an LL Bean backpack like this one that has extra zippers in the front, you might want to put them in there so that way they have their own space, and once again you have a better organized backpack.
After all the steps we have learned today, we now know one great system in keeping your backpack organized. We learned the materials we need, how to properly label, the right way to install 3-ring binders, the most organized way to put in folders and textbooks, and where to put smaller items in our backpack. Thank you for joining us for today's edition of How Do I? Tune in next time as we look into another activity and follow the steps to make it work. In this show, you learn something new every day. Have a wonderful day. This has been the Norwalk Community College Student Production.